Is the recession dead? Are the days of the mighty euro numbered? How safe is the pound in your pocket? Today we hope to answer just some of these questions. I'm James Gallimore and welcome to this week's edition of Money Men. As always, I'm joined by Saul Conway and Craig Bell. In today's show we hope to be reviewing the week's best financial buys, offering a bucket full of financial information and advice and insight into what's hot and what's not. Craig will be airing his tip of the week. Also, Saul will be hitting the streets in his Mac to hang around corners touting for attention. However, unlike his normal nightly romps into the unknown, today he will be accosting unsuspecting members of the public to probe their financial minds. But before all of that, let's review this week's financial news. Right, to this week's financial news. Craig, tell me, you've got an interesting story about gold.
Well, I do, yeah. In the FT, it's told us that investors outshone jewellery buyers in gold rush of 2009. What this means is there's more people buying gold bullion than actual jewellery.
So, in other words, just your girlfriend hasn't been shopping for the last couple of weeks?
Exactly. It's a bit tight on that side, yeah.
OK, fair enough. So, in reality, what that means is people are going out buying gold bars rather than going out buying jewellery as far as an investment or...
Yeah, people see it as an investment, as gold as an investment, rather than as something that looks good on you, because they can't afford that.
But that's probably down to a lot about market hype, about how price has gone up, and also because all these adverts we see on television all the time.
And it's funny you should say that, because as you know, I do the trade press every week, and the trade press has quite a lot on this subject alone. In fact, one article calls it "Bung us your gold, you mug."
Right.
All these adverts coming up saying, we'll take your gold off you at good prices. And that's purely because gold's at such a high price at the moment. These people are going to melt it down or do whatever
So you
they
just take your jewellery along to a place and they just melt it down and turn it into a gold bar?
Absolutely, but you've got to be a bit careful. Mr Greenwood, who's the chief economist for Invesco Perpetual, I've got a quote here from him, and he says, I would be hesitant about making any further commitment to gold at this time.
Well, it's over $1,000 an ounce now, which is huge.
And let's be honest, even if you are tempted to sell your gold, send it through the post with one of those adverts that you see on television, in reality you're not going to be getting anywhere close to the real gold price because there's such a huge, great margin in for the people who obviously market those various schemes. Now, interestingly, on the gold point, reading through in the news this week, I noticed that they're saying that the gold market, copper market and also the oil market may well have major decreases in 2010, up to, in some points, possibly 20% decreases. So this isn't the time. Now, if you want to go out and buy gold, you probably missed the boat as far as that's concerned. You should have been doing that a couple of years ago. So
well,
at the moment...
Quite interesting because... commodities really took off a couple of years ago and really got hurt during the credit crunch. So then they came back somewhat, and so now you're saying it's possible they could fall again?
Well, that's what we read in the papers, that there may well be some large decreases, which is fairly interesting because, now, Craig, you noticed something about coming out of recession this week in one of the papers?
Well, we've heard now that we're out of recession.
Yeah.
This is only a prediction, though.
And what does that actually mean, coming out of recession?
Well, that means suddenly from the economy contracting, it's now expanding again, which is a great thing.
Right, OK, fair enough. And as far as the markets are concerned, what are we actually seeing there? That we're quite decent recoveries?
Well, I mean, 2009 was an incredible year for the markets. You've got to understand, of course, they had a bad year and you're doing it from a very low point. But I've got an article here that tells me that 95% of retail funds in the UK had a positive year in 2009.
Well, that's amazing because what happened in 2008?
Well, you saw massive losses. I mean, up to 30, 40% on some of these funds. So you do have to be wary when you just take figures over a short period of time.
So they're back to the same levels of pre-2008?
A lot aren't, I'm afraid.
Right, OK, fair enough. So in other words, one just has to be careful and read the press and be aware, obviously watch programmes like this, to get some tips as to where to place your money over the coming months in 2010.
Well, where would you put your money, James?
Well, as always, I mean, the property market's quite an interesting one at the moment. We are seeing some property price rises again, reports on the fact that the market is fairly stable. Now, Saul, again, you found an article about this?
Again, yes, again in the trade press, but this is about the Treasury Select Committee of MPs. They put forward a bill suggesting that they're very, very worried that if interest rates go up, a lot of people struggle with their mortgages and house prices will be adversely affected to the extent that there may be a shock to the market.
Now, is that because everyone's on standard variable rate at the moment, which means if rates go up,
Absolutely,
their rate goes up and
really
they pay
cheap
more?
standard variable rate as
Yeah.
well. I mean, so
Okay.
we've got to worry about that.
So just to clarify, what the idea is that we all thought last year in 2009 that we might well have increases to interest rates towards towards end of 2010. But what you're saying is basically the boffins in the government are saying that it may well be still too early to be putting up interest rates.
I would have to agree with that. I
Okay.
think
I
too many
think the
people
Bank
are
of
going to
England agree as well.
Yeah,
They haven't-
and obviously inflation at the moment isn't a problem, so there's no real reason why they should be increasing the interest rates. I mean, obviously on the property market, I mean, I've noticed some articles. There was a great one in the Times a couple of weeks ago about property price increases, and again I've seen unbelievably up in Suffolk beach hut bonkers as far as they're selling beach huts are going up for like £40,000. Now, I mean, I know everyone's having staycations in the UK at the moment, but still, I mean, spend £40,000 on buying a beach hut. I mean, that really is crazy.
Probably not the right time to buy a beach hut, then you say.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree
But for
with
you,
as far as
James,
that's
it's probably
concerned.
bigger than your house, so you might want to go for one.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, whilst we're on the stimulating subject about property, we're going to be covering this subject in Craig's Tip of the Week.
Us Brits have always been obsessed with our homes. Everybody loves to scour the internet for their dream home. Some even nose around to see what prices their friends really bought their houses for. Property websites are such a useful thing, but there are so many to choose from. Nethouseprices.com, ourproperty.co.uk, primelocation.com, glowbricks.com, and the most popular is rightmove.co.uk. But which one should you use? My personal favourite is zoopla.co.uk. Zoopla links directly into the land registry and updates house prices when they're sold. It can even predict property's current value. Sometimes this generates crazy figures, but in general gives you a good indication. There are many other quirky features that can help you when searching for a property, or if you're just being a little bit nosy. So there you have it. Tip of the week, zoopla.co.uk.
Very interesting, Craig. Very informative.
Thank you very much, James.
Mind you, I have to say, however interesting property websites are, Zoopla does sound a bit like an animal dating website.
That does a bit.
So that's the end of part one. In part two, you'll see me hitting the streets of London and we'll give you some of our best buys. So we look forward to seeing you then.